Welcome to the Arkaro Insights podcast, where we help B2B executives deliver better results with the latest ideas in change and innovation for your organization. The episodes feature fascinating discussions with interesting people who have a great story to tell, as well as our original content communicated with AI voices. If you can, please read the show notes to get the most from each episode. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoy it.
People are driven by the intellectual ideas, by what I call this amazing firework display. It's a superb firework display and, captivates everybody. But then we're left with a plume of smoke and a trace of ash because the intellectual world is not real.
Welcome back to Arkaro Insights. I'm Mark Blackwell. And today we're going to explore a theme that really probably should be at the root of human performance in complex adaptive systems, the science of presence. In recent conversations, we've deconstructed this lone genius myth with Keith Sawyer and explored with Hilary Scarlett how our brains are primed to live on the savannah and not so much suited for modern times. So that's more of the the what. But today we're going to talk more about the how. How a leader actually regulates their own biology to remain effective when the pressure is on. My guest today has spent more than 4 decades inside universities, contemplative communities, and executive boardrooms. She's a Buddhist priest, a somatic practitioner, and the creator of the Lodestone Method. Her provocative core argument is that most leadership failure is not caused by lack of business strategy, but by over-reliance on what she calls the brilliant but limited mind, at the expense of our wider human intelligence. She's the author of Your Body is Your Business Plan. Joining us from Tokyo, Japan, Linden Thorp. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mark. It's so lovely to be here. I'm thrilled, and I really am excited about our conversation, and I hope it will develop into more conversations because this is such an important message, I think, to get out.
Yeah, I think just as a positioning statement, the overall theme of this podcast is how to thrive in a complex adaptive world and what it means to do that. One of the topics that comes up repeatedly, obviously, now in 2026 is the arrival of AI. And we've often double-clicked as a result of that. We're just strengthening the question of what does it mean to be a human being on a quite a deep, broader level, because from a competitive business space, it's a fundamental question to ask to be successful. So that's why I'm looking forward to the conversation today, because it's rare to find someone who can speak with equal rigor, academic rigor, about ancient contemplative practices and modern failure modes, but coming from your background. Just again, for your perspective of the listener, you've had a distinguished 40-year career in academia and Buddhist research, and being a Buddhist priest as well. But you've also built a methodology that targets chief operating officers and commercial directors. Can you tell us how these two worlds merged, and what was the specific performance gap that you saw in leadership teams that convinced you that Buddhist teachings and insight and somatic science were not just well-being topics, but something critical for business success?
That's a great question. Yes, I think the turning point for me was leaving academia. So 3 years ago, I retired. I had to retire formally. And for a while, I was in limbo, although I'm always writing something. I'm a prolific writer, among many other things. And then it started to come to me that actually I taught business studies at university. And I've got an MBA, so I've got all that background to business, but I'd never, ever been in business. So one day I woke up and I thought, I've got to do this. I've got to go into business. And I have this very, very strong message to get across to people. And the message about the brilliant but limited mind has been going on for a long time with me. And I've been fighting with academics about it quite a lot. And so that really came to the fore. And I thought, yes, when I examine the business communities I've been involved with, the major thing is that people are driven by the intellectual ideas, by what I call this amazing firework display. It's a superb firework display and, captivates everybody. But then we're left with a plume of smoke and a trace of ash because the intellectual world is not real. And nobody knows this more than Buddhists do. I mean, we work to get away from the intellect, to get back into the spirit and the simplicity of being human, innately human. So that was where I decided I would start. And to begin with, I was very caught up in wealth management. Now, I'd always been impecunious as a teacher. You will never make a lot of money as a teacher. And I'd always struggled really for money and given too much of myself, usually, because that's who I am. And so I thought, yeah, right, I'm going to do this and I'm going to become a millionaire. That was my thought. And when I'm a millionaire, I'm the first millionaire Buddhist priest in the world, I think. No, I think there are a couple of others. But then, wow, what can I do with all this money? And I had such a strong commitment that the wealth of the internet should be in the hands of people who really know what to do with it. So that was my kind of beginning. Millionaire mentor. I was with him for a year, as a multimillionaire actually. He taught me all the tricks. I'd got all my marketing teaching background, the academic background. So I put it all together and then started to bring in the Buddhist notions and also indigenous wisdom, which I'm very passionate about. So that was the turning point, really. And I'm so excited that I made those decisions because 3 years on, wow, I'm in my element. I'm having fabulous conversations. I've got a huge network now. And people are really starting to listen. Yeah, it's great. It's very exciting.
Well, so that first phrase, you said, the brilliant but limited mind, believe it or not, it reminded me of a podcast we had right at the beginning of the series with Garrett Forsyth. And his theme was the leadership transition from being a technical expert to a leader. And what do I mean by that? Well, I think it echoes of what you're saying is in the industries that we work in, agriculture, food, chemicals particularly, very often people are promoted for their technical brilliance in whatever discipline that they have, and that dominates. And they find themselves completely unprepared for what it means to motivate and inspire a team of people. And so we had a lovely podcast where we talked about some tricks and indeed neuroscience tricks that are being to think about. And we had a lovely discussion about being aware of the amygdala hijack.
Yes.
And I thought, I could just put those words in your mouth, Linden, because that might send you off on a journey. The sense of being, and I try to use the words with care, being aware that your body is having a response. Maybe you can just build on that.
Well, now, my passion for the human body began a long, long time ago as an Alexander teacher and Feldenkrais teacher. These are two very special techniques to get particularly performance people, worked with actors, musicians, you name it, into a state where they don't collapse and have stage fright and so on. So the love of the human body and my anatomical and physiological research has gone on for years. And I do truly believe that our bodies are, well, and this is testified to by many scientists, that we are 100% evolved. The systems, when you look at them closely, as a biologist yourself, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Incredible systems. And the architecture, which of course everyone is now talking about architecture, structure within business. It's phenomenal. And the problem is that because we're so taken up with intellectual firework displays and so on, we neglect the body. We don't put the lights on at home. It's dark. We don't go there very often, many of us. So, of course, the body starts to protest. We're kind of really abusing it in many ways. And it's so amazing that, a very short mindful practice with somebody, 10 minutes, I can get them to go inside their bodies and they are home. And they say that very often. And I say, how long has it been since you've been home? And they say, well, I don't know, decades perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think the body is our most precious asset. And I'll put the breath in the same category, because without the breath, we can't have life.
Mm-hmm.
And so from the Buddhist point of view, we have to make bonds with the universe. And that's very much the Buddhist practice, that we are earth dwellers and we belong here because we are on the only planet that provides breathable air that we know of. And so the bond with the earth for Buddhists is very, very strong, and with the universe also. So we really want to bring people back to that position where gravity, which is another incredible asset, is holding us on the earth. I've talked a lot about gravity recently because I do a lot of gravitational sitting and standing, letting people really feel the force, as it were. And so, yeah, I think the more we come back to the body and the more we are grounded, and we realize that the earth and the gravitational force are our greatest assets and they are free, unconditional, then the more we can become present. And so I lead people in this way when I work with them, especially leaders who are very often frazzled and very disillusioned. And the moment you talk about the earth and bring them to a sense of gratitude for being here and now, they start to relax and they start to really see things very, very differently. So I think, we are like the guy who had no money and went off elsewhere to seek it. It's a parable, really. And he got lots of money, sent it home to his family, but then he lost it all because he gambled and so on and drank a lot and crawled back home thinking they wouldn't accept him. And they did. They were so glad to have him back. His mother died, and in a letter that he read after her death, the letter said, "My dear son, you have been so blind. When you left home, I sewed the family ruby into the hem of your coat. So you went off, you got all this money, you lost all this money, came back a beggar, and all the time you had this ruby in the hem of your coat." So it's like that. I think human beings are always looking outside, not realizing that really everything they need to be successful, to be loved, is right inside them. And so that's what I do. I help people to remember. And of course, the other interesting thing is that the body remembers everything. This forgets. We need to-do lists, we need shopping lists, but the body never forgets. And once you access the body in a certain way, then it all comes back, all of that incredible wisdom, and not only through your life, but through your ancestral line too. And, our ancestors survived, and that's why we're here. So it's very kind of logical in many ways, but people go off to the fireworks.
Yeah. Well, again, I mean, maybe just test something with you, and I'm going off to the fireworks, and thought that the responsibility of being a leader. People see how leaders behave, and they change their own behavior and respect for the leader by the presence that is being displayed. And so that's a very important thing. There's a term of felt leadership, which is that behavior that you are demonstrating people respond to way more than the words that come out of the leader's mouth. And so I want to come back to this concept of the amygdala hijack and the overbracing and find parallels between the guidance that the Buddha gave and also the insights they're getting from neuroscience. We are taught by neuroscientists that if we feel that rushing of anger, typical of the amygdala hijack, we should name that feeling to try to distance itself from ourselves, which I think is oh so close to Buddhism saying that you should be saying, I'm sensing anger rather than I am angry. As a way of, is that fair?
Yes.
And also that because that helps you control your body. And a term that you use, which is overbracing, which I think has implications for the individual and the team, maybe.
Yes. I think this is so true. We are living in a bubble, most of us, I think. We are not grounded. We're not anchored in who we are. I often spring this question on people when they least expect it. I say to them, who are you? Do you know? Terror comes into their eyes immediately, mostly. And they say, I don't know. Who am I? Through the Buddhist teachings, he was so adamant that we should know ourselves before we do anything else. And that's why he left the world and went into retreat to get to know himself. And through that process, he discovered the teachings. He built the teachings. So yes, I feel that we have all this incredible potential, but we're missing the point somehow, So coming back to our true nature is essential. And so my flagship product is Lodestone, which you mentioned earlier. Thank you for that, by the way. Lodestone is a 30-day program. It's 30 minutes a day. It's a 30-day audio transmission given by me, and I guide you through all the layers of social conditioning that have been there for maybe decades, since you were 5, when we start to become socialized. And we go down through all those layers, through meditation, through mindfulness and other things to encounter your true nature. And people actually ring me up and say, Linden, I can't believe it, but I met myself today in your meditation. I know who I am, and I never knew before. And of course, this is a combination of things, but it's the body remembering the true nature of the child. Because we're all endowed with this incredible honesty and, joy that children usually have. And so the body remembers through the meditation that we were once so happy, so carefree, so loved, all of these things. And so, yeah, it's safe. It becomes safe to know who you are, and not just psychologically safe, because physiological safety is really different to psychological safety. And think until people experience that physiological safety in their nervous system with a good guide, they have no idea what it is. You can't read about it. You have to experience it. That's the parallel with Buddhism too, There are many Buddhists who think they're Buddhists because they've read all the sutras, but it's nothing to do with the written word. It's nothing to do with language in the end. At all. It's to do with your unique experience of whatever form it's taking, but it's a tiny shift maybe. And that's what happens to lodestoners. They say when they're telling me what's happening, oh, today something shifted. I don't know what it was, but I feel different. So it's those tiny shifts we can't explain, we can't describe, that are actually making inroads into reconnecting with the true self, the Buddha nature, as we might call it. So we've really got so confused about the power of language, As you know, I'm sure, lots of research has been done on how much of any interaction, any utterance is verbal and how much is non-verbal. Up to 75% is non-verbal. It's hard to generalize these figures, but it's been researched now for a long time. Imagine that. You're standing up to give a presentation. You've rehearsed your speech, you've got your slides sorted out, but in fact, you haven't connected beyond those words, behind those words. And so the words you say, meaningless. They drop onto stony ground. And if you look at a really embodied leader, then they don't say much at all. They are a presence. They pause. They move around a little bit. They are not scared to death of failing with their script and, breaking political rules. They are truly there, here and now. And those are the leaders that really make the difference. Yeah.
So can I pick up on that word embodiment a bit? So I just want a couple of listeners, if they've made it this far, they might, just think of them very scientific people looking for hard evidence and spelt their careers looking for that. So just give me a moment to see if I can make a bridge to keep the listeners on board.
Okay.
1988, I was in university in a physiology lecture, and I still remember the hall where a distinguished professor was talking about the vagus nerve. And honestly said, and we call it the vagus nerve, it's the wandering nerve. It's far larger than it needs to be. So that's probably doing something that we don't understand. But we don't really understand why evolution has created this thing. And this was 1988, which is not a long time ago.
No.
Since then, many of our listeners are in the food ingredients industry. They'll know about the microbiome. They know about the 72 trillion cells that live with us, that are communicating to our brain with the gut-brain axis via the vagus nerve. Maybe people of you have got Garmin sport watches who are measuring your HRV, your heart rate variability, which is the toing and froing, the upping and downing, the communication between the heart and the brain. Now, as scientists, we know that these things in recent years are very important. Good scientists also know that there's probably more that we don't know that we do know. But we still believe now that the vagus nerve is fundamentally really important to us in ways that we don't fully comprehend about how the state of our mind, and may I use the word, our embodiment. So that's why I was researching about your logic. You've got your 4-compass framework with connecting the brain, the heart, the solar plexus, and the base. Maybe there's a bridge that you can make between the listeners who readily accept the gut-brain axis and heart rate variability and the science that you're aware of from Buddhist teaching.
Right, yes. Well, the vagus nerve is, yes, it's an extraordinary thing. But in fact, it's not my Buddhist background that makes me focus on the vagus nerve. It's my indigenous wisdom background, because about 35 years ago, I spent several months with a group of Australian Aboriginals, and I was involved in escorting them back to Arnhem Land, which is now their territory, and no white people are allowed in there. And we were walking with them during the night, and then we built shade shelters for them during the day. But above all, we got to know them so well, and I got to know them so well. And they taught me so much. And I learnt about the vagus nerve from them. So picture this. We are walking under this amazing sky. One of the tribal leaders suddenly stops. We all stop. He stands on one leg, which they do when they're really, focused. Stood on one leg, and we stood still and we waited. And after about 5 minutes, he turned around and he said, "Quick, we have to get out of this place. There's a sandstorm coming." So the white people were a bit confused. We didn't have our phones. We didn't have any news broadcasts. How does he know? Anyway, we all repaired to a cave, and we were fine. We were fine. And later, we did access news, and we saw that sandstorm was 10 miles away. from where we were. And he had picked it up through his body. Because Aboriginals and tribal peoples in general don't believe that we only listen here. This is a limited mind trick. The listening is close to the brain, and this is intellectual listening. And yes, we need it in the intellectual world. But in fact, sound is vibration. And if we are open, our whole body can receive that vibration. And, you only have to look at deaf people dancing, which I've worked with quite a lot of hearing impaired people. They can't hear the music, but God, they can dance. They feel the vibrations, through their entire bodies. So, it's a fact that we can detect vibration with the whole body. And as a musician, this is very, very precious to me. I started out life as a professional musician and then became music therapist, which is another strand of the things I'm bringing together. So basically, yes, I was knocked out by this whole body listening thing. I just couldn't understand it here at all. But when I got back to civilization and started to research it, I realized that most tribal peoples have incredibly toned up vagus nerves, very tightly toned up. And most urban dwellers, flaccid, no tone at all. So, of course, the signals that are coming, the biofeedback signals that are coming up here are very weak. And that's why burnout happens. Sorry, I'm mentioning burnout, but it's a big concern of mine. And really, it is a breakdown of the vagus nerve that causes burnout because people don't receive the distress signals. They can't stop. And their body's screaming, but they can't hear it. That's so sad. So anyway, when I looked closely at the vagus nerve, because like you and maybe our audience, I wasn't sure it was such an important nerve at all. When I researched primitive peoples and indigenous peoples, and quite a lot of research on their physiology, because they've got lots of things that we don't have, like incredible eyesight. They can see 10 times further than we can, even the best kind of measurement of eye strength. So when I started to research that, I realized that, they can survive the harshest climate on the earth because their vagus nerve is so strongly toned up, and it enables them to pick up these vibrations at a huge distance. And I bring that very much into my work with people now, because when we start to practice whole body listening, it's amazing what changes. People become much more present, much calmer, and they feel in control because they know if they close their eyes, they can feel a vibration, no matter how far away. And that in turn leads them to other feelings that they've neglected, feelings like gratitude. That's a big part of my teaching too, because, gratitude, we can talk about it, we can think about it, but can we feel it?
Yeah.
I really strengthen people's sense of gratitude, and it starts in the gut, and it starts.
See, this bizarre, these phrases, heartfelt and gut feeling. I'm constantly amazed that maybe there must be more to it than that. And in my own little life, I try some exercises to increase my vagal tone. Probably nothing much as an Aborigine has got, but I'm learning that cold showers helps with getting your vagal tone, gargling in the morning, humming whilst you're shaving.
Yes.
Humming, and by the way, humming, oh my goodness me, we are back to ancient traditions like Buddhism again so quickly that they seem to have discovered these things as being, that we are now discovering as neuroscience valid, that was just part of the daily life.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I have to say, and I'm at risk of offending your audience maybe, but I do think that neuroscience is a bit of a fashion fad. I think that we've focused so much on this brain, which, by the way, the vibrations that this brain gives out are 50 times weaker than the vibrations the heart gives out. The heart is your true brain, and Buddhism says that very strongly. Don't listen to this, listen to your heart. And that's the heart of the teachings, really. It's a heart teaching. So I think that I don't mean to be disrespectful to neuroscientists. I think they've done a great job in educating us, but I think it's time now to come down a bit into the body and to look at things the other way round. So look at the body first and, plumb the depths of the body. And of course, when we look back at Vedic culture, I've got a very long background with Vedic meditation and so on, Vipassana and so on, then we see that the chakra system is just brilliantly accurate in terms of ganglions and, nerve endings coming together and so on. And they knew that, 5 or 6 thousand years ago. So it's all coming
I mean, in
round.
my defense of neuroscientists, I think their message for me that I'm picking up, maybe it's a biased message, is that there is more neural tissue outside of the brain. So we should be thinking outside of the brain as a processing organism. And
Yes,
that's the bridge, I think, that we need to think from neuroscience, that it's
yes.
not just about the servo. There is stuff going on elsewhere that we should be opening our minds to the possibility that it may be more than we currently think it is from a limited mind perspective.
Absolutely. I mean, it's great and, it's really interesting, but is it useful to our lives? Does it make people happier knowing about neural science? And that's what I'm concerned about. Are people happy? And when you ask them, I do very often. I'm, great at intimidating people with asking these strange questions. I asked someone the other day, "Are you happy?" And he said, "Oh, yes, I'm so happy. I've got a beautiful wife, got 3 children, great job, a super car, and I go on holiday 3 times a year. I'm so happy." So I paused and I said, "But what if you didn't have any of that? Would you be happy?" And again, this look of terror came into his eyes, and he said, "No, would not. I would be unhappy." So there is a way in which we are so habituated to outsourcing our happiness and many other things, our health, our wealth, all sorts of our education. We outsource when all the time coming back to the ruby sewn into the hem of the coat. We've got so much. And in fact, I would argue all we need to be truly happy and truly successful right here.
So I mean, again, I'm pushing a little bit back, going back to a combination of being inside us, and we don't need external analyses and the value of the brain. Psychobiotics. I mean, I can be a lot happier based upon what I eat in my diet and the chemical signals that the microbes in my body send to the rest of my body, including my brain, as a result of that. I'm not saying that's the end of the journey. I just view it as a door opener into thinking more holistically from what it is.
Yes, yes. I think that's so true. And not hygiene, nourishment, nutrition.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've got Japanese words coming into my head. I'm losing my English steadily.
Yeah.
Nutrition is really key, and Buddha said that very strongly. You can't be wealthy and healthy and happy unless you're well fed. So nutrition is just so important. And of course, that's another problem with fast food, with people addicted to screens and so on. They're not eating properly. They're not eating at all sometimes. And quite often burnout victims are malnourished. They haven't eaten for months because they've been staring at their screens. And that's, I think, in the 21st century, that's very scary in developed nations.
So, Linden, thank you. We've had a broad discussion. I've got a load of questions to ask yet, but I know if you want to come on again, I've already prepared for another podcast. But maybe I'm going to be conscious of the listeners' time. Just
Yes.
as a final question for today,
Yes.
if the listeners pausing over the weekend and reflecting on this conversation that we've had together, what 3 things could they try out on Monday morning to approach the week differently to the week before?
Right. That's a great thing to suggest. Yes. Well, I would say the first thing is when you open your eyes on Monday morning, switch off the alarm clock, open your eyes, just pause for a moment and be grateful for your breath. Because you've got through the night, you've slept for 7 or 8 hours perhaps, without thinking about your breath. And it has got you through that night. And so every day I start off, and especially on Mondays, because that's my starting day too, I spend just a few moments feeling gratitude. And as I mentioned before, it's not a thought and it's not a word. You can't put it into words. It's a state of being, and it's well researched too, for those of you out there who don't need all the proof. It's well researched that grateful people have very kind of healthy systems going on inside their bodies. So yeah, if you feel it, feel gratitude coming up from the base of your spine, from your gut, and feel it welling up and let it come, because it may bring tears. It brings tears quite often to me. Wow, I've got this incredible opportunity to be a human being, and it's only made possible through my breath. So for me, the breath is the first thing every day.
Right.
So you can try that. Number two, we are each the supreme rulers of our being. Many people don't believe that, but we are. Only we can make decisions. Only we can make changes. And so what I do next is I spend a few moments visualizing my day very calmly, almost meditationally. And it's not just a 2D visualization, it's 3D technicolor. And it's me walking into my life, doing this project, working on this, walking out into the forest. And it's me choreographing my day, actually going through it, as sports people often do, and music performers. So I visualize my whole day. The finishing is when you say, okay, that's my day. But also, I have to promise myself that if it doesn't go quite as I rehearsed it, that's okay. It's okay. Something may take me away. And that's okay, because I'm using my awareness to move perhaps in another direction from my choreographed day. So you have to give yourself permission for it to be slightly different than you visualize. If not, you may start to get frustrated, and you may strive too hard to make those things happen. And that's, again, when we start to get the burnout patterns coming. Well, that's number two. Okay, visualize. Number three is the very first thing I do every day is I go out of the house. I have a balcony, actually. So I go and I stand on my balcony and I breathe diaphragmatically. And I raise my arms and I widen my rib cage and I take several deep breaths from the diaphragm, because your diaphragm is your solar plexus area. The solar plexus is the root of your intention in life and your intuition too, many things. So if you breathe from the diaphragm rather than the upper chest or the belly, which increasingly people do when they're in the visual firework display, they breathe very shallowly. If you breathe consciously from your diaphragm, you will start the day with an incredible clarity, because clarity is not a mindset. It's nothing to do with the neurology, I'm afraid. It is nervous system based, comes from the nervous system, and it's a state. It's not a strategy, so we've got it all wrong in many ways. So yeah, and once you're breathing diaphragmatically, that's a very good time to say to yourself, I am the supreme ruler of my life and my mind, this mind.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And no one can change that. No one can make decisions for me. No one can pressurize me. I particularly do this with leaders, and it strengthens into a kind of mantra, and eventually they really believe. It's kind of lodged in their bodies, So, yeah, you are the supreme ruler of you, nobody else. And you are the only person who can make you happy. Hence,
Thank
my
you.
friend who wouldn't be happy without his wife and his child and his car and his blah. You are the only person who can make yourself happy. Do that, and you'll be amazed how much happiness is around you, because it radiates. And that's another problem with leaders. They're not happy, and they're not radiating that happiness because they're so outsourced, so stretched, and rarely go home and put the lights on. you know?
Thank you for that, Linden. That story of happiness. It's just a little anecdote. One of the things I read this morning was a story of a manager of a chain of supermarkets in New York who knew every name of employees across it. And the board of directors just felt that he wasn't as efficient as he could be. And so they fired him.
Really?
Response: 25,000 employees went on strike because of the board decision.
Wow. Great.
And the lack of having a happy boss who cared about them forced the board to change their minds, really bring back the CEO. And after 10 weeks strike, the chain of supermarkets was on strike.
10
Now,
weeks?
there was a hard business example of the simple value of
Yes.
walking the talk of what exactly you've described. I think that's
Walking
a
the
great
talk,
case.
yeah. Yes, and it
Oh,
really, it radiates. We don't realize how powerful we are just as we are. And if you're really listening to your heart and you're really embodied, when you walk into a room, you bring a light into that room, which is probably full of dark beings who are weighted down with too much intellectual stuff, baggage.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Linden. So if people want to find out more about you, where do they go? I'm going to put everything that you say in the next minute in the show notes. So please give
Right.
me some pointers.
Well, okay. I've got a YouTube channel. I've got 2 websites, and it's really easy. It's lindenthorpe.com.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got a business website, which is my corporate leg, and it's lindenthorpe.com/lodestone, which is my product, dash inside. So we can put those maybe in the comments box or something. And also, if you want to find me any day, anytime, I'll be on LinkedIn. That's my major platform. I'm a thought leader there, and I really collaborate with people via LinkedIn. So just come and visit LinkedIn and you'll find my profile very easily, I think. It's an easy name to remember, isn't it? Linden Thorpe.
Yes. Thank you, Linden. That's really enjoyed our conversation and hope we have
Me
another one
too.
sometime soon.
Yeah, I hope
Just to
so.
listen, we've got a great list of future guests coming up. So please be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you very much.
Great, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. It's been a great pleasure. And thank you, everybody out there, too, for, patiently tolerating me.
It's been a wonderful journey. Thank you, Linden. Goodbye. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That was Linden Thorpe, and I suspect many of you are currently thinking about where you might be overbracing against the pressures of the week. If today's conversation about the science of presence has piqued your interest, I highly recommend tuning into a few of our past episodes that lay the neurological and systemic groundwork for what Linden shared today. For more on the amygdala hijack, revisit my conversation with Garrett Forsyth on navigating the transition from technical expert to effective leader. Garrett provides a brilliant breakdown of how that reactive savannah brain state can derail even the most brilliant technical experts when they move into leadership roles. For the neuroscience of collaboration, listen to Hilary Scarlett discuss her spaces model. She provides the hard science why our brains crave certainty in social connection, precisely the conditions Linden's work is designed to create. And for the mechanics of team creativity, check out our episode with Keith Sawyer on Group Genius. Keith explores group flow and the 10 conditions teams need to move past groupthink. Linden touched on so much today, but there is one area of her work that we really didn't cover, her ENSA protocol. This is a meeting methodology derived from the Japanese concept of a circle with no head at the table, designed specifically to address the decision drag and listening collapse we see in high-pressure teams. It's a fascinating practical tool, and it's something I hope to explore in a dedicated session with Linden in a future episode. Looking further ahead, all of these threads on inner intelligence and presence are leading us towards a conversation later this year with Deborah Rowland. Her empirical research confirms what we discussed today, that a leader's inner state of stillness and regulation accounts for over 50% of the variance as to whether a major organizational transformation succeeds or fails. Until then, I challenge you to try Linden's Monday morning recalibrations. Start with breath gratitude, visualize your day in 3D, and remember that you are the supreme ruler of your own mind. I'm Mark Blackwell, and this is Arkaro Insights. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Arkaro Insights podcast. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed producing it for you. If you have not done so already, please do subscribe with your favorite podcast provider. Even better, it would be hugely appreciated if you could share the podcast with friends and colleagues. Thank you.